Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're stepping away from maybe the more famous Requiems, Verdi, Mozart, Fauré, you know the ones.
hmm
Instead, we're looking at a piece often called Unjustly Neglected. It's Camille Saint-Saëns' Mester Requiem, his Opus 54.
Yeah, and our mission really is to get grips with the paradox of this piece. I mean, it was written incredibly quickly, just 8 days.
8 days.
Yeah, fueled by this huge inheritance, this massive gratitude. But the music itself has this real depth, this restraint. So we want to trace how it came about, the money, the mad rush to compose it,
And the tragedy.
and the awful tragedy that followed almost immediately. We need to figure out why some call it perfect, while others find it, well, maybe a bit uneven.
Right, because the story behind it is just incredible. You've got this professional high point composed at lightning speed, and then, bam, this devastating personal blow right after. Let's start with the money, the obligation that kicked it all off.
Okay, so the Requiem dates from 1878, and it really was basically a musical thank you card. It's dedicated to Albert Le Bon, a friend and patron of Saint-Saëns.
He was the Paris Postmaster General, right?
That's the one. Le Bon died in 1877 and left Saint-Saëns this absolutely enormous sum of money, 100,000 francs.
Wow. I mean, that must have been completely life-changing back then.
Oh, absolutely. It meant Saint-Saëns could finally quit his job as the organist at La Madeleine in Paris, a post he'd held for ages, and just compose full-time. It was freedom, basically, bought by his friend.
So was the Requiem a condition of the inheritance?
Well, initially, yes. Le Bon had put in his will that Saint-Saëns should write a requiem for the first anniversary of his death. Apparently, he took that condition out just before he died.
Ah,
But Saint-Saëns, felt he had to honor it anyway. And once he decided to do it, he went at it like a whirlwind.
that's the bit that gets me. 8 days. To write a whole Requiem Mass, what, about 35 minutes long?
Exactly. He literally checked into a hotel in Bern, Switzerland, and just hammered it out. He even wrote to his publisher, Durand, saying something like, "Don't worry, this requiem will be very short. I'm not just working hard, I'm working flat out."
Flat out indeed. And he made the deadline.
Oh, yeah. The premiere was May 22nd, 1878, at Saint-Sulpice in Paris, a really prestigious venue. And guess who played the big organ?
Go on.
Charles-Marie Widor. The guy Saint-Saëns himself had chosen to take over from him at La Madeleine. So, professionally, this was a real moment for him, a triumph.
Okay, so let's think about where this piece sits compared to other requiems from that time, because you had some absolutely massive ones and some quite small ones. Where does Saint-Saëns fit?
Yeah, that's a good point. He's kind of in the middle ground. You've got, at one extreme, Berlioz's Grand Messe Mort. That thing's like 90 minutes long, needs 4 brass bands, huge orchestra.
Right, epic scale.
Totally. And then at the other end, you might get, say, Gounod's Requiems. They could be really short, maybe 10, 12 minutes. Sometimes they'd even leave out big dramatic bits like the Dies Irae, often just for organ and voices.
So Saint-Saëns, at around 35 minutes, 8 movements. It's substantial but not overwhelming.
Exactly. It balances that sort of dramatic potential with a more classical sense of form and, well, efficiency.
And the orchestra he uses tells its own story, doesn't it? It's quite specific.
Very specific. You've got your standard SATB soloists and choir, then the orchestra. It's got a pretty full wind section, 4 bassoons, 2 English horns, which adds this lovely, rich, slightly mournful color.
But the really unusual thing, the harps.
The harps,
Yeah.
4 of them. Plus a main grand organ and a smaller accompanying organ. And he even thought about where they sat. The trombones were up with the main organ in the loft, orchestra and singers down in the choir area.
4 harps. Why? What does that tell us, especially compared to composers who went for, big bangs and crashes?
Well, it tells us a lot because of what's missing. There's absolutely no percussion.
Ah. No timpani. No bass drum for the Dies Irae.
Nope. Nothing. Think about Berlioz or Verdi or even Cherubini before them. They all use percussion for those big, dramatic, almost terrifying moments. Saint-Saëns completely avoids that.
So instead of shock value.
He goes for texture, richness, solemnity. That shimmering sound you get from 4 harps combined with the power of the organ and the trombones, it creates this pervasive kind of glowing sound world. It's not about rhythmic shock, it's about harmonic depth and color.
Which fits with his known views on church music, right? He wasn't a fan of overly theatrical stuff in church. He wanted to avoid, what did he call it? Useless decoration.
Precisely. He had this interesting position organist at a major church, La Madeleine, but he wasn't keen on just reviving old 16th century styles, nor did he want opera creeping into the service. This Requiem feels like his answer, serious, expressive, but controlled.
So digging into the music itself, you mentioned control. Structurally, he seems quite, maybe conservative is the word,
Hmm.
especially in how the voices work together.
Yeah, conservative isn't unfair in some ways. The dominant texture throughout is homophony.
Meaning everyone's singing the same rhythm, moving together.
Pretty much, yeah. Like
Okay.
chords moving together. It gives it this immediate sense of weight, seriousness, clarity of the text. Now, there are moments where you get a bit of back and forth, maybe between the soloists and the choir, kind of quasi-counterpoint. But overall, homophony rules.
And what does that mean for the listener? How does it feel?
It makes the text really clear, paramount.
Mm.
And the feeling is often one of collective utterance, like a unified prayer. It's not about individual vocal fireworks.
Right, so the soloists aren't given crazy, difficult operatic lines like in, say, Verdi's Requiem.
Not at all. They often share material with the choir,
Yeah.
simple melodic ideas, repeated notes, small jumps. They function almost like, well, maybe like lead voices within the choir rather than stars stepping out front. Think more like a Bach passion, maybe.
Okay. And the way he sets the words, mostly one note per syllable.
Almost entirely syllabic, yeah.
Yeah.
Very few flashy melismas, singing lots of notes on one syllable. And he rarely repeats words for emphasis. It's all quite direct, quite restrained. There's only one tiny bit of recitative, like sung speech for the tenor in the Liber Scriptus.
So on the surface, it's quite controlled, quite unified rhythmically. But you mentioned something about a hidden unifier, a recurring idea.
Ah, yes, the germinal motif. This is really key to understanding the work's inner emotional life, I think.
Okay, what is it?
It's basically built around a falling semitone that's the smallest, most dissonant interval, or sometimes a related chromatic sort of slithering progression. It sounds like a sigh, or weeping.
Right, that little half step down.
Exactly. And Saens uses it again and again, subtly weaving it through the whole piece. It often pops up to underline words about pleading, sorrow, supplication. It's like this little musical fingerprint of grief that connects everything, even though he wrote it so incredibly fast. It gives it this underlying emotional coherence.
Okay, let's touch on some specific moments. The very beginning, the Kyrie. You said it starts unsettled.
Yeah, dramatically so. It kicks off quite loud, forte with a crescendo,
Right.
but it starts in the wrong key G minor, not the home key of C minor.
So immediately off kilter.
Right. And even when the music finds its way towards C minor, he does this clever thing. Throughout that whole first movement, you never actually hear a solid root position C minor chord landing properly as the home chord. He keeps withholding that stability.
That's brilliant. Creates this underlying tension right away. And there are those really stark chords too, aren't there? Kind of blocky.
Yes, these almost creepy block chords that shift between C major and C major with a raised fifth
Yeah.
creates this weird time stand still feeling. It's harmony that doesn't really go anywhere traditionally. It just sort of hangs there, adding to the unease.
Then you get the Dies Irae Day of Wrath. But he doesn't start with a bang.
No, quite the opposite. It begins super quiet, pianissimo, with these hushed, trembling strings, the big climax, the tuba mirum, the trumpet call that is loud, fortissimo. But even then, there's a certain restraint.
That's where the trombones come in, right, up in the organ loft.
Exactly. 5 statements of this simple rising fifth figure, C to G, played just by the trombones, no crashing cymbals or drums. And apparently, trumpets were sometimes frowned upon by the church authorities for this bit, which is likely why he specifically went for the more solemn sound of trombones.
Interesting. And the famous Dies Irae chant tune.
That appears too, but again, quite starkly intoned in unison by woodwinds and the harps. Simple, direct. Now contrast that with the next movement, the Rex Tremendae.
King of tremendous majesty. You'd expect that to be huge.
You would. But Saens starts at pianissimo, really quiet. The focus seems to be less on the king's awesome power and more on the individual soul standing before judgment, quaking meekly, as the text says.
That's a really different take.
It is. And musically, it creates this amazing suspense. Harmonically, the whole movement is basically one long buildup of tension, constantly pointing towards the home key but never quite getting there. It's like a huge musical waiting section that leads into the next part, the oro suplex.
Ah, the suppliant prayer. You mentioned word painting here.
Yes, it's beautifully done. He mixes up the time signatures 24 and 34, which gives it this slightly faltering feel. And the harmony is just this sequence of descending minor chords, F minor, then E flat minor, then D flat minor,
Yeah.
like somewhat bowing down or like tears falling. It's very visual musically.
Lovely. And is there any light relief in all this?
Well, the fifth movement, the Hostias offerings, offers a bit of gentleness. It's in a major key, E flat major, and it's got this simple, almost chorale-like feel. And the harps are really prominent here, creating this sort of twinkly, delicate texture between the vocal phrases. It's probably the bit that sounds most like Fauré's later Requiem, actually.
Okay, and the ending, the Agnus Dei, Lamb of God.
It brings things full circle. He brings back musical ideas from the very first movement, which ties the whole work together.
Mm.
But there's this new kind of winding, almost sinister C minor tune introduced.
Sinister.
Yeah, it contributes to this feeling of, well, the description often used is extreme but beautiful desolation. It builds up powerfully, but then just fades away at the very end. The last thing you hear are just two quiet notes played by the harp. Back to that unique sound.
That phrase, extreme but beautiful desolation, it just takes on this whole other layer of meaning when you remember what happened right after the premiere.
It's unavoidable, isn't it?
Mhm.
The premiere was May 22nd, 1878, a huge success for him. 9 days later, just
Yeah.
9 days, his little boy, Andre, who was only 2.5, fell from a fourth-floor window and died.
Oh, God. That's horrific.
Just devastating. And then, as if that wasn't enough, 6 weeks after that, his other son, the baby Jean-Francois, died of pneumonia.
I can't even imagine. 2 children lost within weeks of this professional triumph.
It completely destroyed his family life. He blamed his wife, Marie, for Andre's accident. Apparently, the window had been left open. He just walked out on her 3 years later to 1881, and they never reconciled.
So, after all that horror, intricately linked to the time of the Requiem's creation and premiere, you have to think he wouldn't have wanted to hear it much himself afterwards.
It seems incredibly unlikely, doesn't it? Which might, perhaps, partly explain why it's not as universally famous as some other requiems. Its history is just so soaked in tragedy.
And that maybe feeds into the critical debate about it, too. You've got some people, like his biographer, Jean-Michel Nictu, calling it basically perfect, sensitive, imaginative, and perfect.
Right. High praise indeed.
But then others find it inconsistent, maybe top-heavy, that feeling that maybe some of those middle movements feel a bit like he was, well, filling time to meet that 8-day deadline.
Exactly. That's the other side of the coin. Does the speed show? Is it brilliant compression, or did some parts get rushed? The beginning and end, the Kyrie and the Agnus Dei, are undeniably powerful and original. But some critics argue that a few movements in the middle, maybe 3, 4, 6, 7, feel a bit more functional, perhaps less inspired.
It's a tough call. Did Saint-Saëns himself read it?
Oh, he seems to have remained proud of it. There's a story about him later in life being quite pleased when his Requiem was chosen for a performance over Brahms' German Requiem, which he apparently called soporific.
Huh. That sounds like Saint-Saëns. Always competitive.
Definitely. So yeah, you're left with this piece born from gratitude, created in this incredible burst of energy, clearly showing his skill in scoring and creating thematic links.
But forever shadowed by this almost immediate, unimaginable personal loss.
Exactly. It's a work of professional confidence, instantly and irrevocably linked to private devastation. #tag outro.
So, the Requiem, Opus 54. It really is a unique piece, isn't it? A statement of gratitude and musical mastery, composed at breakneck speed, only to become this sort of unintended memorial to the composer's own shattered life almost overnight.
It really is. And it leaves you with this lingering question, I think. We know the 8-day composition sprint was driven by that external deadline, the need to honor Le Bon.
Mm-hmm.
But the music itself, it has that deep-seated unity, that recurring motif of the falling semitone, that sigh, and all that restraint, those quiet sections. It feels so full of a kind of inherent sorrow. So was the speed just about pressure? Or was it something else? A kind of spontaneous, maybe subconscious grappling with mortality that tragically seemed to anticipate the grief that was literally just days away?
Mm-hmm.
You have to wonder, how fine is that line sometimes between genius and grief?
That's a really profound thought to end on, especially thinking about those final harp notes fading away into silence. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.